Let's go.
That's it. We're here.
All right. We
Ready.
did it.
We did it. We're back. This is a special Sunday episode of CornStars. This is episode 21, which is brought to you by BlackBoxCages.com. Check them out. Chris, have you gotten your BlackBox stuff yet?
I have my BlackBox stuff. I have my Bio-G and my XR20 rack. Waiting on a few things to be able to set them up, moving around some stuff in the room. But I am blown away as somebody who works in engineering and manufacturing and fabrication. The quality of these items they're next level. I've always harped on other brands and how happy I was with them. Getting these things in my hand, you guys aren't joking. This is extremely quality products.
What are you putting in the Bio-G?
Nice. I'm going to be doing my pair of. I don't know if it's going to be big enough. I'm going to see how they do, but I have my pair of North Carolina Foothills corns because they're little, and next year they're going to be 4. I've cohabbed them since I got them from Montrose. They're less than 3 foot long, and I'm going to cool them this year. So I'll probably set the Bio-G up while they're in brumation, and when they come out, have them in a neat. I've got some ideas on how I'm going to do the enclosure so that there's multiple levels, and I may even do like a subfloor kind of thing in it, with some cut PVC. I'm going to cut some shapes on the water jet at work and kind of see how it comes out. So I don't know. I've got some really exciting ideas, man. But once I got it in my hands, I was like, I could do anything I want with this, right?
It's such a great size.
It's a good size.
Great enclosure. That's one of my favorites. Like that's what I've got half my rhinos in, and I've kept chondros in them. It's just such a good size for stuff that doesn't get huge, but is also half arboreal or semi-arboreal. That's going to use that vertical space.
Yeah,
it's such a good size.
And it's not heavy. It's lighter than an Exoterra.
Yeah.
Right? An Exoterra of a similar size would be an 18 by 18 by 24. Same size product, but it is rock solid. Like I know for a fact I could drop it and it'd be fine. I mean, don't do that, but I'm just super pleased with it. And again, the rack, I got the one with coasters and 2 heat zones on it. It's perfect. So.
But you're still waiting on tubs for that, right?
I messed up. I thought I had enough tubs, and it turns out I don't actually know how to count because counting is hard, and I am from Texas. So, it does not have tubs right now, but I do have tubs coming.
Boy, so. I love the thing. The thing I appreciate the most about a good rack is if I can open the tubs from top to bottom, and it doesn't get difficult the lower you go.
Exactly. Or one's not slightly jiggly or one's not. Yeah.
Consistency and being able to do it without spilling waters everywhere and stuff. And so far,
my God, that's the worst.
Are completely issue free. On the the last 2 tubs of my XR16, those 2 do stick a little bit, but that's because they're on carpet and I don't have them on a toe kick or on casters.
Oh, okay.
So they're kind of sunken into the thing a little bit. But if they were off the carpet like that, they would without a doubt be just as smooth. But man, I hate it when there's nothing worse than getting a rack that you just spill waters every time you try to open tubs or
you have it where it's tough to close on the backside, so you get the tub like 70% closed.
Mm-hmm.
And then you give it that real good shove to get the rest of the way, and it spills the water, and it's right when the snake shoves its head out of the tub.
Yeah.
And so you're just afraid that you're going to decapitate little Mr. Noodle. Yeah, that's So yes, quality products are very, very nice. So I'm very excited to have these moving into the collection here soon.
Well, if you are interested in getting a rack or a cage, head on over to BlackBoxCages.com. Use the code THN at checkout. Save yourself a little bit of money. Right now, they are doing a giveaway on their page, so go give them a follow on Facebook and Instagram and enter there. I think there's a gift certificate or store credit. I'm not entering it, obviously, because they're a sponsor, but let me double check real quick. I should have looked this up before. So a $500 gift card. Doing it now through the 30th, so go onto their Facebook or Instagram and do the necessary entry steps and get yourself something nice. You can get some good stuff for $500. Some of those Bio-Gs that we were talking about. The XA3, which I have, that's basically 2 of those Bio-Gs put together. It's a great size. It's what I keep my Persimmon in. So go give them a follow. And then JT and Mindy at Silent Hill Reptiles, also check them out. SilentHillReptiles.com. Has he updated his for sale page yet?
I have not seen it updated. No, I don't think so.
Well, we're not entirely sure, but you should go check it out. Go and find out and let us know. Because I know he's got a lot of stuff. He's got to be posting some of it soon.
Yeah, and I know that his breeding season
already
starts. Yeah, his breeding season starts early too. Mm-hmm. So he may be, he's up there in the northeast area. So he's probably getting ready for either in brumation already. Because I think he pulls out in like December, right? December, January.
I don't know if he like staggers it to where he has like one group that he pulls out earlier.
That's
and then
right.
There's one group that he keeps sort of going into, I guess, the early part of the next year. But I know he definitely has done some earlier than a lot of other people, I guess. Yeah. But when you have cooler and more consistent cooler weather like that up there, he's in Pennsylvania. I'm sure that makes it a lot easier than where we are. So I don't know. So
yeah,
give them a follow on Instagram and Facebook as well, and then hop on over to fullviusapparel.com. Shameless plug.
Woo.
Use the code THN at checkout as well. THN listeners and viewers like you get 15% off your order. That code does not get posted anywhere else. That is exclusive to the audio and video that you are hearing and or watching. So did a test print on a hoodie that I've not printed on yet. It's in the washer right now just to see and make sure it holds up, because it is kind of a higher ratio of polyester to cotton, which usually make me a little nervous because digitally printing, that's water-based ink, and water does not stick to poly because poly is waterproof. So came home, I washed it. It's in the dryer. I'm going to pull it out and see how it see how it holds up. And then I plan on getting some hoodies on the website here soon as well. So
awesome.
It is now cooling off officially, at least here
in
South Carolina. We're actually getting some decent colder weather, which is unheard of this time of year. So
even South Texas is nice. Yeah, we cracked 100 on Friday, but other than that, for the last week and a half, it's been in the high 70s. So
it's actually calmed down a little bit.
I mean, we have such sporadic weather here. We're gonna have super hot flashes and super cold flashes, but it's so nice to just be in the garage and not be dying. So
yeah,
I don't even have a fan on. Come on, y'all can't hear my fan this episode.
I've got one on, but it's pointed. We just keep it on. I don't even think we bother to turn it off anymore. Nice. But it's existing. That's it. But we'll sort of jump right into stuff. I know we wanted to keep sort of the updates and stuff fairly brief because we want to jump into it here with our guest this round, which is Carol Huddleston of Low Belly Reptiles. As far as updates for me, I don't really have anything new going on. Sort of getting some meals into this latest clutch of the hypo corns. Definitely going to start putting some of those up for sale at some point somewhere here within the next I guess it'll have to be within the next like 2 or 3 weeks, because typically I don't ship from November until like mid-January or mid-November to mid-January just because of the holidays. But if anyone has any interest, I mean, their het pod, het annery, should produce some really nice stuff. I'm going to end up holding back a handful of them because some of them have come out and been absolute.
They're pretty
lookers. Yeah, there's been some really nice ones. Especially that second clutch. There seemed to be a higher amount from that second clutch that I really sort of raised an eyebrow at, as terms of like I might have to hold on to you for a bit. The twins are actually doing really good too. Both of them 8.
That's cool.
So one of them is definitely a little smaller than the other one, but I mean, they're both completely healthy. Both of those were Tessera too, which I thought it would have been interesting if they came out and one was Tessera and one wasn't.
Yeah, I don't know. I had a pair of twins in, I think, 2019 that one was Tessera, one was not. And then this season, I had a pair of twins that were both not Tessera. So that's it. I don't know. Oh my gosh, it's like a Doc Wyman question. It's like I'm not smart enough to know if they're supposed to both be identical. None of mine were identical twins. They were all slightly different. Oh, that'd be kind of cool if you could get 2 different morphs in one, like an albino and a non. I don't know. I don't know how that works. As far as my updates, everything's good. I hatched my last 2 eggs, which were leechies. I'm so excited to not have any eggs to be checking. Everything's chilling. I'm doing cleaning. I'm going to be doing a little trimming in the collection. I've got a few adults that I'm getting rid of. Just I've got to make room. I've got to figure out my life. I've got to fund another snake room or reptile room that's turns out twice what I had originally planned on it costing. So we don't even know if that's going to happen now. I've got to make some smart decisions as to what I'm keeping and what I'm not. Every single snake, with the exception of 3 Alterna, have eaten now. Those last 3 Alterna, I'm done trying for the year. They just go into brumation, right? Like we're so close. You know, my Halloween's my cutoff for feeding.
Yeah. They're crazy, man. I feel like we just turned off the incubator and stuff, and we're already sort of gearing up.
We did
slowing down on feeding and get everybody prepped for cooling and stuff.
Yeah,
next month.
I mean, I've got males that probably are only getting 1 more meal. I've got females, maybe 2 or 3 more meals on the corns and kind of Leonis and Alterna, and some of the Pitiovis will get fed a little heavier before brumation, just because their metabolism usually makes them a little. They'll lose a little bit more weight,
right?
So I want to make sure they stay healthy. But other than that, man, it's so nice. Now I'm just cleaning and feeding, which is like the best. I'm not worrying about getting babies to eat. I'm not worried about this and that. I'm not bringing any animals in. I'm not shipping anything out. I don't even know if I'm going to sell anything. I've probably got 50 snakes available, but I'm just going to wait. Right now, the market's not in the place. I'm not going to wholesale everything. Market's been a little rough. I got a show in February and one in March, so I can hold out till then. It's been good. It's cool.
Well, if you end up needing more to sell at that show, you let me know.
We'll see. We'll see how they go. But yeah, other than that, we are so excited to have Carol on. This is somebody that we've been talking about since we started recording this show. Somebody whose collection we're enamored with. Sounds like the ethos of their collection is something that we want to learn more about. And so Carol, welcome onto the show.
Thank you. And thank you so much for making provision for a Sunday. I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
no problem.
We try to be as flexible as possible.
Yeah.
I know the zombie thing we will get into, but that has been probably one of the most requested things people have asked us to cover. And I think really the only person that can do any backstory on those justice is you.
Yeah.
So I know I'm really anxious to get into that. I know we've had a lot of other people that have been very interested to know more about that gene in particular.
I think we all have them now.
Good.
I think everybody we know has them. They're
everybody
wonderful.
Should. They're really cool.
Well, Carol, why don't you tell us a little bit of as much as you want to tell us, or not as little as you want, really, your start with reptiles and maybe what along that path led you to corn snakes.
I always was a all animal person. I was never like a snake person or reptile person. I love snakes. I love turtles. I love cats. I love dogs. I love horses. So I was always a really shy person, even when I was really young. So I was always kind of drawn towards any kind of animal because they're much more easy to hang out with, in my opinion. You just hang out and be cool, and you don't have to say a lot. Just be there. So if it was an animal, I loved it. And I always had hobbies that kind of circled around animals. And when I was a kid camping, we were camping on the Russian River in California. And
Nice.
we caught a little garter snake, me, my dad, and my sister. And back in the day, the Happy Meals in the summertime, it was like a sand bucket. Your Happy Meal came in a sand bucket, and it had like a sand sifter on the top.
Yeah, I think I remember those.
Do you? Okay, so you might remember. And it fit really nice. So we were like, perfect. We're just going to stick it in the Happy Meal box and keep it and not tell Mom until we're almost home.
Yes.
So that's what we did. We're probably, 3 hours into the drive, like an hour left to go. And so we start telling, hey, do you want to see my snake? And of course he's like, what? But we always like, well, what are we going to do? We're not going to go back. We can't release it here. It's not its natural habitat. It won't survive. So, oh, darn, we have to keep it.
Criminal entrapment. I love it.
I know. And she really was like, she put up with so much from me, like bringing animals home all the time. So we had that one for a long time. And of course, when that one escaped, she was the first one to find it. Poor woman
every
with
time.
Naturally.
Yeah.
Every time.
She went for like days. Like every time she put her shoes on, every time she opened something, she's just like looking. And finally, we just heard like, "Carol, come get your snake."
Oh man.
So we had that one for a long time, and then it eventually ate a goldfish backwards, and it didn't survive that.
Oh wow.
And it's kind of crazy because the goldfish that didn't get eaten, that were left over from that, like it lived to be like 20 years old.
Holy cow.
So we got another pet from that. And then corn snakes, I was in my early 20s, and I had a friend who worked at a pet store, and she just said, "Oh my gosh, you had to come and see these baby snakes. They're so adorable." And I went, and of course, as soon as I had one in my arm and wrapped around my wrist like a little bracelet, I was hooked.
That's awesome. What kind of corns were they? Do you remember?
My first one was a creamsicle.
Oh wow,
And
yeah, nice.
he lived like a long time, at least 20 years. It was only a few years ago that he passed. So I had him, and the whole family loved him. My son was really young at the time, and we would hold him all the time and play with him. And I thought, you know what? I have a big display tank, so I was like, oh, I'd love to have another one. And I talked to the pet store, and there, I had no idea there was like an online presence of anything. So I just went to the pet store for my info. So I was like, okay, can I keep two together? And he goes, oh yeah, you can keep. I'm like, male, female. He goes, oh, you can keep whatever you want together, because the males aren't fertile unless you brumate them. Which was not accurate. So I got my second snake was from Don Soderberg at South Mountain, and I was just too new at the time to ask him for his opinion. I just got a second one and put her in the tank, and they loved each other. They got along fine. I never had any issues with it until the breeding. But actually too, and we were like, I loved them so much. I was like, after they were like kind of together and living together for a while and doing well, I'm like, I was looking at the Miamis, and already by snake 3, I'm like, I love these Miamis. I'm like, okay, just one more. I'm gonna just get one more. I'm gonna get a Miami because I love them. And so I got a hypo Miami from Don Soderberg, and not knowing anybody, I put him in the same tank with the others, and he like instantly like hated it. So I put him in with the others, and he was like stepping on a packet of ketchup. He just squirt away and wanted to get out. So I'm like, okay, he's not into it. These two are into it. He's not into it. So I got him his own tank right away and his own little setup. And then I saw him, a year later, I saw my two breeding, and I'm like, okay, that's interesting. You guys are so funny because you're not even fertile with my knowledge. I was like, whatever, guys. And then it came really apparent that she was gravid. She definitely had eggs. And so she got 4 out, and unfortunately she did egg bind because she was really young and really little. And so I was super bummed about that. And that's where I really, really started going online, and there wasn't a lot. There was still kingsnake.com. And I don't think when I started, corn snakes wasn't up yet. It was just the king snake forums.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, I got these 4 eggs. What am I going to do with them? So I started just doing the research and hatching them, to incubate them and get them just right. And of course, same year, my friend got married in England, and we were part of the wedding party. So they paid for us to go out to England to be in her wedding. And of course, that was right when my eggs were due.
Every single time.
So my very first clutch of eggs, I didn't get to see them hatch. And going back to my parents, they came over, and they were so sweet. I'm just like, okay, I have these eggs now. They're probably going to hatch. If you just put a water in there and don't do anything, and I'll deal with them when I get home. And of course, I'm talking with them with updates. And even my mom was like, oh, they're so cute.
Yeah.
It's like their cute little faces are adorable. And she's not really, a snake person, but she had to admit that they're really adorable when they come out. So
it's funny you say that, because out of all the stuff that I've had and stuff over the years, my mom has always had a soft spot for corns. Like, that's the one that she's always interested to hear about, her corns.
Yeah, she loved them until I got 1 million of them. And then she's like, when are you gonna get rid of those snakes? All the time now. But she still does appreciate looking at them and how cute and pretty they are. But from there, I just got on the forums and wanted to like help educate other people like me. I didn't want them to go through the same thing, but also like I loved having the babies that I wanted to do more. So I was just soaking up. And that was like, first clutch was like 2001.
Okay.
And then I just went from there.
Have you consistently bred corn since then?
Mm-hmm. Yep. I just slowly but surely add a little bit more, add a little bit more, add a little bit more, and started having different focuses. But I think I started with Miami right away.
Nice. Yeah, that's a lot of tenure in it. That's good. So some of these questions are going to be awesome.
I mean, I guess the question that I have, because this is something I struggle with too, is just like, how do you stay focused on a handful of certain projects with the amount of options there are in corns? Like, that's the thing that I find. Like, I need to downsize, and I'm very much into Castagna, and that's what I really want to put a lot of focus on. But I'm tying it into some other stuff. But to think of like, if I were to downsize right now, there's so many things that it's like I probably should move, but I'm really interested to see what can be done with it as far as the other stuff that I've got. So it's like, how do you really stay focused and narrow it down to that kind of?
I had to learn. It was kind of hard on my end because when I came in, a lot more things were coming on the scene, and at that time, it was kind of feasible to have every morph. When I first started, it wasn't that out there, and so then of course, every morph, even if I didn't like it in the beginning, after seeing it a while, I would like start to appreciate it, and so my collection grew and grew and grew, and then finally, as the more morphs came, you realize, okay, I just can't keep them all.
Yeah.
And it's hard. It's still like not an answerable question, like who do you pick and who do you don't? But of course, Miami's have always been my favorite, so that's always been in the forefront. And then what I've had in the background is always changing.
You see those, people in the hobby that they have like 3 morphs or so that they're just completely laser focused on, and they don't stray from that. And I've always been sort of jealous of their ability to do that, but there's just too much cool stuff to do.
I'm extremely jealous of that.
Oh,
it's hard because then you get rid of some animals to make room for some new projects, and then a couple of years later, like maybe your projects didn't turn out exactly how you wanted. You're like, dang, I shouldn't have sold those ones that were like way better for that path. So I've had that happen many times over where I'm like, oh, those animals, I shouldn't have got rid of them so early because I wanted this new morph. And now there's 20 other people having this new morph, and it would have been better to keep those. So it's kind of impossible.
Yeah.
Have you ever worked with, kept, or bred any other species outside of corns?
Yeah, we've had lots. We've had I had cave dwellers because I love cave dwellers.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to keep them, and I had big display tanks, and I just got really busy with work, and the pair, and they're almost breeding size, but they always love to poop in their water bowl, and I would come home from work and because they were out in the front, like the whole house would smell until I got it and bleached it and dealt with it, and I was just working too much, and I'm like, I just don't want to come home to this anymore. And I had my hands full of corn projects that I had, and I'm like, this is something I can always get back into later. And so
it's the worst Blade plug-in on the market.
Sorry. Yeah, don't put them out in your living room for display animals. Keep them in a snake room somewhere or have a small water bowl. But we had MBKs for a long time, and I always loved them. And at the time when I was having them, I don't know why you could not sell those things for $50 on the West Coast. No one wanted them. And I couldn't understand why, because they weren't that aggressive. They're amazingly beautiful, and they would just sit on my table. And so finally I just stopped breeding them because there wasn't buyers for them and got out of them. And now they're like $200 a piece.
Yeah, and then like 2017, 2018, they just quadruple in price.
Mm-hmm. And so now I'm growing up another pair. They might breed next season if the male gets big enough not to get eaten. The female's ready. The male, I just want to make sure he's like big enough to at least stand a chance.
Yeah, all the Gutata stuff I breed, I'm always like watching it. I'm like, are you going to do it? Are you going to do this thing? There's always a chance. Super fun.
Yeah, there is. So if he gets big enough, then I'll have another go at him. But if not, even just a pair, they don't take up too much room, and I really enjoy them. So I have those. We used to have the Baird's rat snakes, which is another thing. They're amazing. I love them.
Amazing.
They don't sell on the West Coast so well. Especially, you'd have to bring an adult animal because I think as babies, they're just you know everybody's like, oh.
You cannot take Bairds and not have adults and expect to
sell them.
Yep.
Yeah. So I would love to get back into those someday when I have more time and there's more room in the collection. And I do have Thai bamboo rat snakes.
Oh, nice.
Oh, nice.
And I didn't breed them this year, but I have a couple captive bred, been captive bred for a long time. And then I have some F2s that I'm growing up from Sarpa Mitra, if I'm saying that right.
Matmos.
Matt.
Yeah. So I have a pair from him, so I'm probably just going to cross those two lines.
Perfect.
That's a group I've wanted to get into as well, but my room's just too warm, especially in the summer months to pull it off, and my wife won't let me keep those in our bedroom where they would be perfect.
Yeah, those are my only display animals right now are those ones because only there's certain spots in my snake room that can be cool enough, but not enough for how many I have.
Mm-hmm.
I think I only have 6, but still. So I have 2 out here in my living room as display animals just to keep them cooler.
They're a cool display animal too.
What Bairds were you working with when you were doing those? Any locality in particular? Or?
I wouldn't remember because that was probably about 15 years ago.
Okay.
I just had a pair that I liked,
Yeah.
So.
I love it.
Yeah, I was on the fence. I have a pair of Mexican Bairds, Nuevo Leon, from Fort Worth to San Antonio Zoo stock. They're really coming into that color. They're a couple years old. Heck, this year they may be 3. Excuse me. And they were on the table. They were on the table of cuts. And then, even today, I was cleaning and I opened up the tub and I was like, oh.
Yeah, dude, I was feeding mine yesterday. I opened the tub. I was like, oh, I had that same reaction.
It's just because you forget what they look like because you remember when you got them and they were little and maybe they were picky feeders, whatever. And then you're running through and you zip open that tub and oh my gosh.
And they're so big and they're so friendly. They're just so chill. At least the ones I had were just like puppy dogs.
Yeah, I don't think people realize how big that they're for a Pantherophis. They're not stocky like the yellow rats and stuff we have here, but they are big. They're long and they're thin, and my adults are decent sized animals. I mean, they're definitely longer than a corn snake, even if they're about the same girth as some of my males. But people don't realize a well fed and well kept Baird's that's a decent sized rat snake. That's not a small snake.
4 or 5 foot, right?
I mean,
maybe more.
My older adults are probably pushing closer to 5, if not more. But just like we were talking about with Joe Rosa, maybe the width of my thumb.
Yeah.
Not big, just long.
That's my Chinese beauties. Every time I get them out, after a shed or something, I forget that they're growing. And they're like this. They're like this big around, and they're under a hide box or something. I'm like, I'm gonna take it out, and then it's like, oh, you're over a 6 foot snake. That's right. And then they bite me. Super cool.
Amazon tree boas, man. They just keep unraveling.
Yeah,
they just don't stop.
Well, so what would you say the current state of your collection is? You've talked about some of the other species, but as far as the corn snake front, how many, or do you not know? Some people don't know. I don't know.
I prefer not to know.
I prefer not to know, but do you have kind of a ballpark number of what you keep, maintain, and breed every year?
My adults, let me do some quick. I think I probably have 60 to 80 adult slots in my rack. Maybe closer to 60.
Nice.
And I have no room for expansion. So that's once those slots are filled, if my holdbacks get big enough, or I buy an adult, which I don't do so much anymore, but if my adult, if I have to move somebody up, somebody has to go. So it kind of keeps it limited, but I'd say probably around 60 to 70 adults in that
solid
room.
Number, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's a
probably more than I should.
That's a potential for a lot of babies.
Yeah. I work full time and I have a lot of other things that I'm into, so it gets It's rough. It's already like right now. I can usually handle it, but as I told you, like the last year, our family's been going through all kinds of stuff, and it's just been. You never think about that. Like if you max yourself out, what if there's a disaster happens or something really big happens? What are you going to do?
Yeah.
So now that's kind of more in my mind frame where have some wiggle room. Always have some wiggle room going forward now that I've experienced it. Especially the last 6 months, I didn't have time to. When you're roommating and you don't have so many babies, you kind of concentrate on what you want to do and who needs to go.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really have time for that this year. So now I have a lot of holdbacks and animals that needed to go, and then the market's not great right now, but so I don't want to let go of them for nothing.
Yeah.
And so I just have a ton of animals right now from that kind of fallout, like double doozy.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I'm like, please Sunday.
Like everyone I that we talk to, even in like within and outside of our friend group and stuff that we talk to on a regular basis, I feel like everyone is in that position right now. Like everyone I know that is breeding on, anything other than like single pairs or something, like everyone's just like really loaded down with animals and like no one's buying.
Yeah, I've made over 200 babies this year. I am breeding a ton way less next year. Way less.
Yeah.
It's just I'll still be selling this year's snakes next year probably.
That makes me wonder though. With that, is like, is everyone else going to think that, and then is that going to cause like a vacuum next year?
Yeah, I go in the same circle, or will that have people that don't care so much that just came on the scene, give them more runway with it too?
Yeah.
So I keep thinking, and I just go in a circle, and I really can't decide which is which is better.
I think the best thing with that is for me, I'm going to do what's going to be the most reasonable for my time. I'm with you. I work, 60 hours a week, 50 to 60 hours a week. I got a kid that me and her do a lot together, and I've got a ton of other hobbies, which is probably pretty dumb of me. But I'm a very hobby centric person. Me and my wife like to travel. I love traveling, so it's like I can't. This year I thought I was like, man, I'm going to make all these cool things. They're going to fly off the shelves. It's going to be real easy. And I'm one of those people. I don't like wholesaling stuff. I don't like the idea of it. It makes me feel like it's necessary in certain situations. And of course, there's always a discussion to be made to have it happen. But I'm one of those people that's like, well, I also just can hold back everything and just keep all these things, right? Like I could keep all these, 32 leopard geckos that I hatched because I've only sold one. Then I'm like, I'm going to keep these leopard geckos with my daughter, and we're just going to have leopard gecko time 3 times a week. And it's,
I have no issue wholesaling, but my concern is always like, if I'm sending these animals out wholesale, like, is the level of care that they're going to get going to be worse? And you really can't think about that kind of stuff because once they get in that box and FedEx has them, like, there's nothing you can really do about it. But that's just something I do keep in the back of my mind when I'm considering wholesaling and being a little more picky about who they go to, I guess.
That's kind of face the same situation at shows too sometimes too.
Absolutely.
Though.
Yeah.
So
you get a lot of families that come up and just grab a snake and say, I'm buying this one. And you don't know.
Yeah, and you can't say no. Or you can ask, what do you keep it in this and that, but you still don't know.
Yeah. Just try not to think about it and just kind of just assume it's doing great somewhere out there right now.
Yeah, I know. And I wholesaled some a few years ago, and I'm always tentative because I had some non-feeders and I was so busy and I just didn't have time to work with them. And so at the beginning of the show, I had them on my table at a super discount, like with explanation, I can't get them to eat. Good luck. They're this price. And one of the other vendors came and grabbed them all. And then the next day I'm browsing the show and he's got them on his table.
That sucks.
That was awful.
That really sucks.
I was like early enough and young enough in the group. I'm like, and someone had always been at the shows and always been a big, like, the big, what do you call that? The center, like the 4 table, huge spot. So I'm like, I don't want to cause trouble, but that's messed up.
Yeah.
At least do that like 3 shows later or 2 shows later, or something. Like
and then they weren't labeled as non-feeders, of course. So that just really, stuff like that really bothers me, because then you have this kid that might be getting their first corn snake that is just going to have his heart broken.
Yeah, that would leave a bad taste in my mouth.
That might end the hobby for that kid. You know what I mean? Oh yeah, I got a snake, but it didn't really eat. And I just didn't
Yeah,
stick
and
with it.
I hear that all the time on the table, like, oh, I had a corn snake, but this and that, and it's kind of hard for me because there's so many wholesale type breeders at the shows where I go to. I'm like, I kind of want to just advertise that, yeah, this is everything I have on my table. I hatched myself, and I know it's eaten at least 5 meals. But then it's like, how do you do that and not piss other people off too? So
yeah, and then they're just going to do it anyways. They're going to put the same thing out there, right? They don't.
Yeah, and some people are just going to go for the lowest price tag no matter what. And what are you going to do?
Like to think that natural selection is a thing economically in that regard, where like the people that are really know what they're shopping for and what they're looking for are going to go to the right people for that kind of stuff. And then unfortunately there's going to be the people that are just going to want to sort of appease their child or whoever and get whatever the absolute cheapest, baseline option is and roll with that. And it's just like, it's statistically, there's always going to be those groups in some number.
Yeah, maybe the ones that, even if that happens to them, if they really loved it, they're going to do the research to find out, okay, what happened here? What can I do better next time? Hopefully.
So see it in green trees a lot. A lot of people get, they see the $350 BIOC on a table and get it, and it makes it maybe a month, and then they realize, okay, well, if I had spent double that and gotten something that was captive bred and considerably less of a headache, I could have circumvented all that frustration and heartache. And maybe that's a lesson that everyone's got to learn at one point or another. But that was my experience. I got a green tree back in like 2007, I think, and it lasted all of about a month. And I was like, I'm never keeping these things again.
Yeah,
this was horrible. Just dropped all this money on it and died, and now I've got about a million of them, and I can't get.
Yeah, I was supposed to say you have a whole room full of them, and you're like, I need more. More.
I love the pain. It hurts so good.
Oh man. Well, let's talk a little bit about these beautiful corn snakes. We'll kind of just start with the Miami phase. Maybe we call it a phase. Maybe we call it a locality. Maybe we call it a phenotype. What is it about the Miamis that led you specifically to that phenotype?
I just love the coloration. I just love that red, gray, and silver, and the contrast in them. I mean, the more I'm into corns, the more I really like other things. I kind of like everything over time, but those have just always been my favorite. I don't think in my mind, that's the most beautiful corn there is.
Very pretty animals.
Yeah,
very pretty. Especially some of the morph combinations, and of course, we're going to get into some of the projects that you have. It's hard to beat a Miami corn snake.
Yeah, the contrast and the colors, and I always love the red in them too.
I am addicted to contrast with color. So like for me, like Alterna are like it, right? Yes. Is that kind of same steely gray, the bright pop of color, and Miami's really
yeah. I mean, I love Arizona. I love Arizona Mountain Kings too, but I've just corn snakes are easier.
Yeah. They definitely are. They're not always. They are not always. I have had corn snakes that are not going to eat, that are going to be pissy, that are,
I know, and especially don't ever write keeper on their bin before they've eaten like 5 times, because it's like the kiss of death.
Right? Isn't that? It's like the prettiest one hatches out. You're all
yeah.
Like, oh, man.
I have one right now, and I've gone through the whole, and I did put keeper from the very beginning, and I've gone through like at least 12 different things that have one of the 12 have always worked, and she just nope. So I don't know. I might send her.
For me, they're all keepers, right?
There you go.
And then I just decide if I'm ever gonna get off my butt and sell any, and I'm just like, I'd rather just spend 12 hours a week just taking care of babies.
Dude, that's where I'm at with those Het Castagna Motleys that I got. Like all of them,
they're badass.
The second time, and they're all looking so. I'm like, I'm not getting rid of any of you. Like Daryl Canby got one from me the beginning of the month, about 2 weeks ago. I met him in person, which was cool. He's also in South Carolina. He's upstate, but he got one of those Het Castagnas, and those things are looking good, man. Like I'm seriously very tempted to keep every single one of them. I'm kind of terrified too, because they're so horrible in terms of like their strike and run and flip out and bolt onto the floor and take off and not
those
sit.
The best ones.
Dude, they're horrible. They're so bad.
I love those.
So bad. But damn it, are they pretty? Like,
and the problem is why do we love these stupid snakes that go through an ontogenic change, right? And that you're not 100% how they're going to look as adults. I mean, you have a good idea, you know, but then we start mixing and matching, and we're like, well, I have no idea what these are going to look like, so now I've just got to keep all of them. So,
yeah,
it's tough. All right, so Miami projects. You know, obviously, we want to hear everything we can about the zombie line. I've got a pair that I got from JT over at Silent Hill Reptiles. I've got a male zombie motley and then a female visual cinder zombie motley, and they are some of my absolute favorite corn snakes.
Yeah, I think even the cinders one, their head even gets more gray than the others, and it's so cool.
They are so cool to watch go through their ontogenic change. They are strikingly gorgeous animals. The male is going to be a breeder this year. I'm going to be putting him to actually an male motley that I just love. I have this girl. She's just, for me, the perfect male motley, and I'm going to plug him into her just for.
I think I know which one you're talking about. Yeah,
that one I got all those. I was calling them like bullet hole, or they're not hurricanes. They're like the little dots down the back. And she made some killer babies for me this year, and I proved out what het she doesn't have, which is good. I think she is just a male and motley. So she's going to go to that boy, and I'm just going to hopefully have a bunch of real pretty motleys that are het male and keep some of the. I'm going to keep them all. I don't even know why I'm saying I'm going to keep some of them. Those are some that I'll probably keep for like a year to see which ones are kind of going the direction. But yeah, please tell us about the zombies.
Those just started with a cinder motley outcross, and I had crossed it to a Miami and F1. I really hate myself for selling those F1s because they were my favorite of all. They ended up being so, because lots of zombies now, it kind of goes through the whole body. The head is most pronounced, or it fades, but a lot of the color on the saddles also fade over time. But my F1s had like the most faded head of all, but they still had that bright red Miami color. And that was really cool. And I bred them for a couple years, and I had a few of their babies, and my collection got big, and I thought, well, I got the babies, you know, I'll be okay. But still, I still need to resurrect that red coloring back in it, and maybe just have two lines. Keep the faded ones that fade, because people like those too. And keep a line that has the zombie head, but keeps the really dark colored saddles. And the only problem with that is, like, I'm always stingy with my Miami females. So I always want to breed them to another awesome Miami to have the most perfect Miami. So I'm like, I don't want to backslide for a zombie project, but I'm sure I will at some point do that.
So we're both of the original zombies. They came from a cinder motley to a Miami motley. So it's always been inside the motley family.
It was a Miami. I bred to a Miami, so I got and they were, you know, because of cinder, they were very Miami looking at motleys. And yeah, just a few, and it wasn't all of them. So I kept the ones with the lightest heads back. So they didn't all. So I still haven't quite pinned down how that's inherited. And I'm hoping now the more people that have them and breed them, maybe we can figure it out, because I just don't have the collection size to test that out.
Right.
Yeah.
And it seems to have come. It just comes back in a lot of cinder stuff anyway. So I'm sure cinder probably has something to do with it. And so,
kind of like
maybe it has something to do with the rest of the dilution too. Like, who knows? I mean, maybe, I think there's so many things going on with cinder.
Yeah,
that we don't know.
Cinder's a funky one, and then cinder with other morphs creates even funkier things.
Yeah,
the cinder hypos are really neat.
It's such a cool thing to just throw into stuff, you know. It's again, going back to green trees. It's like the Biak of the corn world. Like, you throw a little Biak blood in there, and it just really does some. It's like throwing a blender into things. It just does all kinds of wacky stuff.
Yeah, and I think I was the first person outside of Rich to have the first cinder on accident, because he sold me a het and didn't know it. And so, and I bred those animals before I even knew I had cinder in it. So cinder kind of just ended up in a lot of my stuff eventually. Because
I guess the het does have it's a visual phenotype, right? It's a lighter kind of more Miami-esque animal.
Yeah, and I fought that belief so long, and I finally caved. I finally caved, and then I don't even know why I fought it so long, because how I ended up with it is I bought a beautiful Upper Keys animal from Rich, and I think he advertised it as Upper Keys Miami, and she was just her Miami coloration wasn't that great, but her background, the silver, was really nice, and she just had this crazy metallic look to her.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, well, that's going to be cool to look into my Miami lines. And I think I held back 5, and of the 5 I held back, only 1 was not het cinder.
Okay.
So I should have told myself, right? That should have told me a long time ago that, yeah, you kept the better ones that looked like better Miamis.
Yeah.
And so that's probably why they were all het cinder, because they were the better Miamis.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and we ended up having a male in there, and I hatched the first peppermint from that group too.
Nice. So you produced the first peppermint?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, awesome.
Yeah, and when I hatched him, because Rich hadn't said anything about him at all when I had hatched him, and I was like, what the heck are these? They're definitely not charcoal. They don't look like anery, because anery are so dark, they're like black, and these are cinders hatch gray.
Yeah.
And so I started posting on his forum, like, does anybody know what this is? And it took a while. Finally, he fessed up. Oh yeah, I have and in the beginning we called it Anery C. And it went from Anery C to Morph Z.
Morph Z,
and then,
huh?
Yeah, I called it Morph Z for the longest time. They didn't know what to call it. And then it annoyed me, because on that forum you couldn't search for like one letter. It had, so if I wanted to search for stuff, you couldn't search for Morph Z.
Yeah, because that's what they called it before they officially sort of, I guess, let people vote and call it cinder. Is that what it?
Yeah, I put the vote, and I probably shouldn't have. I mean, I probably was stepping. It should have been Rich's thing to name, but he was not taking. He wasn't in any hurry to do it. It was. I'm like, we can't do Anery C. We can't do Morph C. Please call it something. And we just waited, and finally, I just put a poll on cornsnakes.com. And people chose cinder, so that way, because I felt like, well, it's not me choosing it; everybody else chooses it.
Right.
And so the market chose cinder, and then as soon as we didn't cinder, then Rich came out with ashy.
No.
Oh.
Like you waited, and he's like, "No, I'm going to change it."
Yeah, now he's at ashy, and ashy just never flew.
Yeah, that's I think I like cinder.
Cinder fits. I think cinder is fitting. For some reason, it just, with that look, it just works.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially when they have the red. We're kind of getting away from that. And that's probably another thing I'd like to see get back into, is they used to have a ton of red at the base of the scales, especially the females.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like they're getting more gray as time is going on.
Yeah, because it's, to me, it looks the phenotype of a hypoerythristic animal, right? It's not the absence of red, it's the dilution and the diffusion and the reduction of red.
Yeah, and the peppermints are so pink compared to snow.
So pink. My female zombie motley cinder is got that gorgeous pink red undertone in those scales. And you first and foremost, I don't know how you take pictures of these animals, because I cannot.
We talk about that a lot.
I cannot take a picture of a snake to save my life.
Animal.
But that girl in person is beautiful. She's got everything that it takes to make me smile.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, obviously we all love all of these things, but yeah, that's cool. So in that realm, so you say you want to maybe try to get more red back into the zombie, or have you ever tried it with other morphs?
I haven't, because I really don't have a lot of other morphs that aren't their own little project. I pretty much have just strictly Miamis, and right now I have to keep my project so limited because Miami does take up a lot, and that's fine with me. Mm-hmm. So I think I have a couple of, and I don't know if anybody's come up with a name for them, but peppermint lavender. I have a project that's peppermint lavender, blood red, even though we're not supposed to say blood red anymore. So I should say peppermint plasma stripe. There we go. I got it out.
Peppermint plasma stripe. And they're striped.
Yeah. So I have project animals for that.
That's a lot.
And that's a lot. But I really do like the peppermint lavenders. They end up completely white snake.
Mm-hmm. Really?
And unlike the blizzards, and like palmetto, they're a completely white snake with a blue hue to them, a lavender tone, where the other ones kind of have a little bit more warm tone. So I like how these animals are a little bit more cooler tone. So I have that project. I have Reverso Kitty and Reverso Kitty Motley, which is a never-ending project because someone said it can't be done. So I'll be working on it for 20 years. And yeah, the zombies and the weirdos. So it's hard to mix them too much because I have to give up a Miami female to do it.
Yeah.
And so I held back a lot last year, a lot of Miami females. So maybe in a year or two when I really just have a ton of Miami females, I'll do it, because I've had years where I've had half the clutches go bad or I get slugged, and you never know what's going to happen. And I always want Miamis, so I always just tend to breed them all.
Yeah.
If you were gonna put more red into the zombie stuff, what route would you go to do that?
My reddest Miami male.
Okay.
Yeah, I do have a really nice Miami male that he has a little bit of tan towards his neck, so he's not perfect, but his red is so deep that he still earns his place as a breeder because it's the most beautiful deep red. So I'd probably use him.
Nice.
See what happens.
And I love just hearing you talk about selectively choosing, even within the realm of morphs and phenotypes. Like, I'm going to add red by this, and it's going to create, it's a years long project, right? This isn't a first generation thing; it's a second generation. It may see some signs of it in the first generation, but this is a 6-year project. This is a 9-year project. This is a 12-year project, and that's what's pretty amazing. That's I'm taking this Amel Motley girl, putting her to the zombie male that I have, and he's gorgeous. He's perfect. He's got the deep, not super deep red, but it's bright red, and he's also super placid. Of all my corn snakes, he's one of the ones that goes in kids' hands first. And so putting him to her, I know that I'm going to get hets, but it would take a long time for me to ever get anything back to what, you're talking 2 to 3, 4 generations to get it back to anything that's going to even remotely resemble the zombie phenotype in an AML or even back to a normal.
You never know, though. You never know.
I'd much rather be lucky than good. That's also something a
lot of people, it's popped up in a lot of other lines that were not even, can't be traced back to my line where the looks popped up. So
yeah, my goal with that also is to hopefully see visually which ones are het sender off the bat. You know what I mean? Because he's het sender, so there's a small chance that I'll get a handful of het senders. So I hope I'm able to spot that and be like, these are the ones that I want to hold back.
Yeah, it'd be a fun thing to test if you had the room. For sure. You keep them all and test them all. I'm
going to build a whole nother room,
a lot of babies.
Right?
Just buy a second house.
I'm working on building a 12-foot by 12-foot room. And my wife is constantly like, it's just for like gaming. I play Warhammer. I do a lot of miniature tabletop gaming and painting. She's like, it's just for gaming, right? And I'm like, yeah, that's all it's for. That's all I'm going to do. I'm going to get a mini split and be able to cut it down to 50 degrees during the winter.
That's right.
I'm going to get a window just so that I have natural sunlight. I'm going to
let the paint cure where it needs to,
Yeah, play Warhammer, right? It's just play Warhammer. Definitely not for all the racks that I've ordered. Awesome.
Where does the weirdo stuff fall?
Yeah, the weirdos.
Is it like in that same realm with the zombie stuff?
It was actually a completely separate happenstance. That kind of, and I forget what came first. I was looking it up before the show and then I didn't write it down. But they were a few years apart. But the weirdo came from a milk. Rich Z had a milk snake phase.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which, that's a different kind of Miami as far as I'm concerned. It was with the cool banded saddles and stuff.
Yeah, I love.
And so I have those. I have those as well. And I mixed those. Don had an amazing banded motley line that had like Miamis, hypo Miamis, Amels. And so I had Amel banded motleys from Dawn that I had crossed with a milk snake phase. And then that's where my first weirdo came out.
Okay.
And she just right away looked a little different than everybody else. So I kept her, and every shed she just got lighter and lighter. And I had the baby picture. I pulled up the baby pictures, and it was like, yeah, she definitely, even now looking back, more than. I think poor girl's gonna be like 9 years old now this year. She's still bred for me. Did great. But she definitely looked different. And the first few, I think I didn't breed her till she was 4. And the first couple pairings, I didn't see anything different until I finally like crossed her son back to her. Mm-hmm. And now when I cross her son back to her, like they're almost all like 75% definitely weirdos. Which I probably need to come up with a better name, but
no, it's a great name. In the world of like ball python names, where they're like bottle cap lid, highway, pavement stripe, sign, construction sign. Like you call it whatever you want. I love the weirdo name.
Yeah, because I think VMS, who's not even around anymore, they had something else that they called weirdo that was a completely different thing. And then I think Don has a few that he calls weirdo. I mean, it's just natural when we had something different. We're like, okay, that's a weirdo.
Yeah.
So I have to chat with Don and see how he feels about it. Like,
I wasn't sure if it was the same weirdo as VMS because I know the VMS ones looked very different from
that was like a pattern thing, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Odd. They almost looked buffish to me. Maybe that was just
and the way they looked at, I actually, although now that I'm talking it out, some of the milk snake phase motleys kind of look like his weirdos. But I'd have to go back and.
The weirdo does, I've seen your pictures. I don't think I've seen anybody else with pictures of them. It's so for people listening, it's kind of like so they hatch looking typical to a Miami corn, right? They don't have a big phenotypic difference as hatchlings.
They're just a little bit lighter, and they're a little ugly as hatchlings, honestly. And I think that's it's taken a while for it to take off. Like a lot of people were interested in them, and this year it seems like a lot of people now all of a sudden. Others that have finally took the plunge and bought them from me and grown them up, and now people are seeing what they look like. Now people are like forgiving how they look as hatchlings because they're very brown and gray. But she just, from the others, she was just a little bit lighter and a little bit more brown, which doesn't make sense now because as an adult she's completely cool toned, like silver gray with some pink and red.
Yeah, kind of as the snake ages, as it goes through the ontogenic change. It kind of washes out, right?
And we'll have to see because of course I lost my best keeper last year because I'm like, okay, she's getting older. I better start keeping some instead of getting rid of them all. So I kept a really nice. I kept back 2, and my favorite one escaped. And this year I'm keeping back even more. But I'm hoping the babies have. She always kept a really bright red-orange eye, which was gorgeous to see, like a beautiful gray snake with a little bit of red at the base, almost cindery, but a little bit more red. And then her eyes are just really glowing red, which I think is cool.
And have you kind of made a determination whether it is polygenics at play or is it act like any of our kind of known Mandalorian? Oh my gosh, Star Wars, Mendelian scale stuff.
I haven't figured it out. I mean, there's got to be something to it that I didn't really hatch many when I bred her to other stuff until I brought her son back into her.
Yeah.
So, what I really need is, as more people have them, they can help me with numbers because I just don't have the space to work out the numbers. And that's one that you really have to watch them and keep them for a while. Mm-hmm. So I might try and talk to a good friend into keeping the one that hatched this year with the most red. See what happens with it. See if that one turns or if that one doesn't turn.
So at this point, have you gone weirdo to weirdo?
No.
Okay.
No, just her son, because her son is pretty red. I think I should have sent you guys some pics, but he's got some faded saddles, but it's not the same. It's just like your normal red faded saddle Miami Molly. And what I want to do next year, and I probably only have one good year if I'm lucky out of her, is and I've never been willing to do it, but I should, is just breed a cinder to her to prove that not.
Oh, that it's not a cinder. Or
that it's, well, no, I don't. I know she's not a cinder, but I just don't know if cinder's in it. But she's never produced any cinders.
I got you.
But I just want to know, just to be sure. I mean, since she's the original animal.
It's tough when it's a female too, right? Like I've had a couple things like that where it's like the female is the one that you're trying to prove out, and it's like, oh man, it's so much easier when this is a male. I can just plug them with 5 females and go from there.
Yeah, especially when I brought her to the sun and she's making cool animals again. I'm like, okay, well, let's just get more of those into the world first. So it's taken a long time because it was kind of like a sleeper morph. I didn't know what it was, and then I couldn't reproduce it. And then finally, when her son got big enough, then we have them again. So kind of just going from there now.
See, Justin already wants to put it into Castagna because Castagna also starts out as you just can't tell what it is when it hatches. It's kind of a doo-doo snake. And then it's one of the more beautiful ontogenic changes and goes into become a really, really gorgeous, really special toned corn snake. So
we're all gonna have to get bigger tables so we can bring all the adults. And
that's
I promise it will look like this, and then they're like, okay, crazy lady.
I think with at least Castagna though, you can wait for like those first like 2 sheds, and that color, that nice blushing starts to come in at least a little bit.
Yeah,
they don't look like just an anery,
or a caramel or any of the other devoid of that when they hatch. Awesome. Well, I'm excited to see where the weirdos go. And if I'm not supposed to be adding snakes this year, but if there were snakes I was adding, that is something that I would be very interested in because I love that look, that kind of contrasty, blushy, cold tone. With those hints of red is just
yep.
It's tough. You need some Alterna, right? Like, let's make something happen. Okay, so you work a lot with Motley Stripe and then into the pinstripe and banded
more so, yeah.
Could you talk to us
banded
a little bit?
And Motley are connected, right?
So yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Where did this come from? Because now we have to talk about it, and I missed it.
I'm like, am I losing my mind right now? And I know, and that's funny because I had so many people messaging me privately. Banded and Motley are not the same.
I don't see how you could even really like see the correlation between the two. Like, to me,
well, I think someone just saw the term banded Motleys because there are banded Motleys out there and just assumed it was a type of Motley. So what happened was, and this was just like a few weeks ago, I was posting some of my bandeds, and it lets you tag on Morph Market. So it lets you, there's a banded tag, and you can add the tag, but as soon as you hit save and you preview your ad, the banded changed to Motley. And I'm like, am I doing something wrong? Like, what the heck? Or is it just glitching out? And I tried another day, and then I'm like, even had my husband, I'm like, can you please watch me for a second? And I'm not losing my mind, like putting banded. And I hit save, and he's the IT guy. So anytime, like, if it's the computer or the phone, if he's in the room, it won't do it. It's like, oh God, he's here. I won't do that malfunction again because he's going to get me. So I'm like, okay, watch me do it. And so he watched. He's like, no, it changes to Motley. So I emailed them and said, hey, this is a weird glitch. And their response was, that's because banded is an alias to Motley.
What happens when those damn ball python people get their hands on
and you just send them a single line email back, do you know who I am?
No, just the girl that breeds Miamis. But I just responded, I'm like, that's not accurate. I'm like, that's like saying Miami Motley's the alias for Motley too. And so he said, please post on the Motley, because they have a Morphpedia on their community page that has the different morphs and write-ups. And the person who did it, it's a really nice write-up other than that inconsistency. Someone put a lot of work into it, but they're like, and I hate I understand why they want it to be public because they want to make sure everybody's kind of agreeing on this, but I kind of hate calling people out in public.
Right.
And I'm like, who am I just to go in there and say this? So I made the post on Facebook to say, hey, if anybody wants to back me up on this discussion, I'm going to go over and say, no, this is not the same thing. It's two completely, one's line bred, one's simple recessive. So I did a post, and it's funny, from that post, I just have the question, is banded and alias of Motley, and so many people are just educating me now that they're not.
So
I'm like, I know this
number. Everyone bombard him with text messages until he fixes it.
I on the Motley thing, Motley is such a special genetic mutation. In the world of all reptiles that we work with, there's not another genetic mutation that acts like Motley, in the sense that it can actually be line bred to have different phenotypes that can be strikingly different, very different, right? I've seen Motleys that they all have a plain belly, right? As far as I know, and I could be wrong in that.
That's the other thing is the banded Motleys sometimes will have some checkers.
Oh, well, there we go.
Which I know, and people are like, okay, she really is a crazy lady. And I try not to talk about it too much until some people buy some banded Motleys and they're like, it's not a lot. It's way reduced. It's a few. But I think it's just because those bands wrap all the way around the snake and some just creeps into the checkers, even if it's a Motley. So, I mean, that's the great thing about corn snakes is you can never say always or never.
Yeah. Yeah.
But 99% of the time, they have clear belly, completely clear bellies.
But you can have Motleys that almost don't look like a Motley, right? I've seen some Motleys that have very few connected saddles, and then everything else is just kind of looks normal corn snake, but it's completely plain belly. And then you have pinstripe Motleys that look like a tessera, and then you can have. I mean, there's so many things going on with it. I love the Motley morph. I think it's
and the zombie Motleys. I mean, they're all Motleys, the ones I've been producing, because the son is a Motley and the female is. And I've gotten some that are fully funky striped all the way to the end, and some that nothing connects at all. They just look like normal saddled. I mean, less saddled, but within in one clutch, they all look different.
Yeah, that's kind of one of the cool things about Motley is you can get a bunch of different phenotypes in the same clutch of the same morph, and then you put it with tessera. I'm like one of the biggest fans of tessera Motleys. I love that super clean, kind of crispy stripe, and those neat kind of less patterned sidewalls, but even that can be variable.
How do you feel about tessera?
I like it most of the time. I hate how hard it is to get it out, like especially if you're doing Motleys. If you find one and you want to get Motley out, and then it's really hard to decide what's a really cool pinstripe Motley sometimes and what's a tessera.
Absolutely.
And people will say, well, the tesseras are the only ones that have this clean striping, but that's not. I've seen that long before tessera has been a thing. So, I like them, but I don't like having my clutch like all of like how it dominates everything. So the Miami tesseras are amazing.
Yeah.
What I've hatched here, I really love them, and that's kind of got me over to really liking them. Is the stripe, even if you get the fully striped Motley Miami, they don't have the contrast like the Miami tesseras do. So the contrast is so much better. Where the stripe, when the red gets a little bit faded and reduced, and even the gray, I think, is not as striking. But I have some Miami tesseras that it's just like almost white gray and then bright red. And I hear a lot of people have a hard time keeping the black border in them, but a lot of mine, I'm like, I haven't seen that. A lot of mine have the black border in them too. So
yeah, you posted some of your Miami tessera stuff that is just crispy, awesome.
I really like them.
They're really cool. It's so hard. It's so hard to not have everything.
Yep,
it is. So I think I always have Miami tesseras.
Yeah. Is there, while we're still talking about Miami stuff, is there a direction you see your Miami stuff going? Like if you said in 2, 3, 4 more generations, what are the plans with your Miami stuff, or is it kind of to keep doing what you've been doing?
I would like to hatch more perfect ones for clutch. It's kind of my goal, because I'm still, and every time I tweak, you tweak one thing to get a better this, and you lose something else that you like, and so I'm always like trying to get everything that I like back in there. And I've gotten that with a few animals, and so now I'm like, if I could just make that consistent. That's what I just work on. Just as many babies as possible that look like the parents.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to know some. And for the longest time, I went in a circle with all the caramel Miamis and honey Miamis and stuff. And I'm like, well, I understand they came from that line, and the silver is really cool. But I wish they'd have a different name from them, because I'm like, well, if you take that animal and breed it to a Miami, will the babies actually be Miamis?
Right.
Yeah.
Or will they not? But then again, I circle back and I'm like, well, sometimes you breed two perfect Miamis together and you don't get nice Miamis. So does that make those two snakes not Miamis? No.
Right.
So
Yeah. And that also, you could, and not to derail this a little bit, but you can get two snakes from Miami, right?
yeah.
From the actual locality that don't look anything like that.
Yeah.
I believe it's Dade County animals. Depending on what region, what area, you can have those really high contrast, lots of silver, lots of bright oranges and reds, but still find some that kind of look a little bit more Keys-esque or a little bit more Glades, a little bit more orange saturation. And so where do we fall on this line of explaining to hobbyists and potential hobbyists that, okay, well, Miami's a locality, Miami's a phenotype that we line breed for, so it's kind of a phase, and have you found that you struggle with that at all?
Well, I struggled too. A lot of people, they'll hear, oh, go to Carol for Miamis, and they're looking for locality animals, and I don't have any. None of my Miamis come from locality. They're all been line bred, and I get people coming, no, I want one that's not hit for anything. I'm like, well, can't do that either,
Good luck.
Yeah.
Yeah, and man, and just because it's part of the hobby, the test breeding that would be involved to prove out no heads and all that stuff is, and you're talking 3 to 4 years for females, and it's
because I've mixed motley, and I've mixed different things in where I'm like an A male for sure, A males and everything.
Yeah.
But it's kind of the same thing. Like I had a customer recently ask for a Miami Okatee because they bought a Miami Okatee at a show, and I'm like, well, it really depends on what you define that is, because there's a million different people that had. Is it actually a Miami cross Okatee, or is it its own line? Is it like Tony D's line? And they showed me a picture of the breeder, and it was an amazing snake that they had. And I'm like, well, I could hatch a female that would complement that. And it kind of took me a couple months. I finally found a female that I think would have the same look as the snake he showed me. So I sent him the picture, and he goes, but is it Miami Okatee?
Yeah.
I'm like, well, depends on what you define that as. I mean, it's really hard for things like that.
There's a lot of subjectivity.
Everybody has a different spin on it. And it is, in some places, it is a certain line. In some places, it's the actual pairing. In my case, I had an animal. Well, it will look very much like the animal that you have,
Yeah. I have a kind of along similar lines. I have a reverse Okatee female that is like awesome, like lots of white, mostly white, right? And she's got this beautiful bright orange. She doesn't have any of those kind of burnt umber tones at all. She's mostly orange, and so I bred her to a ultramel motley tessera in the hopes to get tesseras and ultramels that had that kind of high white, right? So that it goes. I love ultramel Okatees, and I hatched a few, and I held almost all of them back because that's what we do. And I kind of looked at it and I was like, if I was selling one of these ultramels, it has the phenotype of an ultramel Okatee, but would I even call it that? Because it didn't come from an Okatee father, and the female definitely is. And then I kind of decided not to, right? And I took one to a show, and somebody's like, what is this? And I was like, it's an ultramel. And also, she
ended up snake.
Yeah, it's a corn.
It'd be a corn snake. I mean, I could tell you the genetics at play in it. Also, she proved out het anery, which made me very, very fussy. I did not want anery in her. And she made some really pretty snows. The thing that's really funny is the snows that she produced are really weird looking, in the sense of they don't look Okatee. She also made ultramel aneries, snow tramels, and they look really weird. And I was like, well, now I have to keep these things because I don't know what they're going to look like in a year or two. So yeah, that was a weird pairing. I'll never do the pairing again. I'm going to raise up one of those ultramel boys and pair it back to her, and we'll go from there. Because then I'll kind of know what I'm working with. Man, it's hard, and you're dealing with the same thing with the Miami being a line bred polygenics, right? It's what else is in there? We're not talking about 2 genes, 4 genes, 5 genes. We're talking about hundreds of genes that are lining up to create a phenotype because it's so much more complex in line breeding than it is with just simple recessives or codoms. So it's I can see that's awesome.
It's a never-ending job.
Are you
I'm set.
Are you particular about the AMLs you're using to plug into the Miami stuff?
I don't. AML's always kind of been floating around from just the different snakes that I purchased. And so I've had AML come up, and I never started with candy canes. I always had candy canes come out of my Miamis and held them back.
Favorites. I love a really nice high white candy cane.
Yeah. So sometimes I keep them and sometimes I don't. And sometimes they just pop up in my Miami clutches. But I'm not sure, like if you just got a candy cane from somebody else that wasn't breeding Miamis, how it would look. But I've never, well, this year I did put a candy cane, but he came from my Miami lines anyway. Two really nice Miamis. I kept the candy cane back, and so I did breed him back to one of my, this year, actually I did it last year, and the animals were so nice I did it again, so.
I feel like there's candy canes and then there's like candy canes, because I see a lot that are labeled as candy canes and they're not really like.
Oh gosh, and they're babies and they already have a little bit of orange, and you're like, oh
yeah. No.
And then they look at mine on the table, and I've had them look at mine on the table and then run off and grab one and bring back. Oh look, I found this one for $40 cheaper. Okay, well that's an AML.
Yeah, I got
first and foremost get
that the year before last, and it was nice and white and red, early on, and it is now firmly orange and white, and which is fine. I mean, it's still a good looking animal, but when it comes to AMLs, I'm a little more particular, and I really like high white stuff. I'm not as big into the orangey kind of look. So like to see that thing kind of start to turn orange is a bit of a bummer, but that's still a nice animal, and it's just like that. I'm firmly a believer that there's like candy canes and there's like real candy canes.
Yeah. And I kind of do. I want to work on what pops up here. I want to get just a little bit more red. So I have a few holdbacks from last year that are really, really red. So I'm hoping those can help out in a couple years.
Awesome.
The white I kind of got down. It's in the quest for the white, some of the red was lost. And that, that's just my whole struggle with Miami and candy cane is you go for one, unless you keep them all. It's hard to pick out that animal that's going to have bowl.
Yeah. And it's difficult as we try to wash orange out of these things. It makes sense that the red is going to fade a little bit, right? Like as the orange comes out, you're also losing some amount of orange saturation in the red. So it would kind of make sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully in a couple of years, they'll give me some really nice babies.
So before Justin asks, have you ever put Castagna into any of your projects?
I have not, only because I can't have any more projects.
There's always room for at least one more.
I have no room, and I'm already and I haven't really posted this. I've talked with Dawn a little bit about it too, but I have out of my shatter stripe lines, I'm getting some cinders and even some non-cinders that there's something going on with them. The cinder stripes are like amazingly shiny. They kind of look like an oil slick. They're significantly more shiny than all the other cinders that I have. And I sent him videos and pictures, and he's like, okay, yeah, definitely something different going on. And I have a lot of holdbacks from that clutch to kind of breed them back and work on them too. So that's like a whole nother project that I haven't talked about that's taking up space in my snake room.
Yeah. So and those are shatter stripes?
Well, it's from the shatter stripe project. Okay. I only have one shatter stripe right now, and I don't think he has the look, but there's some offshoots from that pairing that have the look. And so I'm going to kind of just be slow with it. I had a lot of pullbacks, and I'm going to breed those and see what happens.
I wonder if it's like a lavender thing where it's like the iridophore structure or something is
actually different. Something going on in the scale.
It might. I think. Yeah, it might be because it's really weird, and yeah, I'm still making my mind up about that one. But I have a million snakes from, clutch mates from the ones that were shiny, and the mother. And I purposely didn't breed the mother this year, so because she's getting older. I thought, well, I'll wait till one of these grows up and is ready for her, and maybe she'll go one more year this year. But I just can't take on any more projects. I mean, I think that's really where we're headed. We can't have them all now. So,
you know what? Don't need to hear that in my life right now.
But other people can have them, and you can visit them and see their pictures. And
gosh, this resonates so much with me right now because it's, I actually just sold an adult pair of snakes that I'm shipping out on Tuesday that have been very special to me since I got them as babies, and it's. I have to constantly go in that room and tell myself, I can't have everything, and it's really hard. Because like I'm probably overly passionate about my animals. I will hold every baby back, right? I don't even care. I made a morph market and posted like 3 snakes this year. I hatched like over 200, and it's. My fun thing that I've done this year is I've had a couple friends that are just like, hey, I just want some snakes. And I'm like, I'm sending a box of random stuff to you so I know where it goes.
Yes.
Alex Horvath, one of our close buddies, I sent him a whole clutch minus 2 snakes. And he was like, oh, I really like that one snake in the clutch. I was like, what's that shipping address, baby?
Yeah.
Let's go. You're about to get snaked.
Surprise, it's 20 more.
You're about to get snaked up. But yeah, and especially with corn snakes, you're talking about what 33 visual morphs, something like. I think it's around that number. So many different combinations, so many gorgeous combinations, and then you just barely dip your toe into.
There's so much we still don't know about, even like Cinder. I mean, we don't even know everything about what we have, let alone what's coming. And I know I kind of want to bring back too. Another someday is the lava blood reds used to be really nice when they first came out.
Yes, they did.
And I feel like all the nice ones went to Europe.
It's possible,
and they're not the same as they used to be. I mean, they're still gorgeous. They're still amazing, but they're not the same as I remember them. So that's always in the back of my head too. Like, okay, I want to start that. So as far as any of the new morphs, I'm just like, don't look. Don't look. Don't even look. And I know you guys like to talk about like a scaleless and palmetto.
Yeah,
a lot.
At some point, we ask everybody. Yeah.
So they didn't do anything for me, and I didn't get into them until I saw the charcoal palmettos, and I love those. And I just love the dark eye with the white snake. And so I have a trio of those, and scaleless didn't do it for me at all, and especially with the price tag. I'm like, no, I don't really like them. And a good friend of mine got some snakes from him and put one in the box. And as soon as it was in my hands, I was just like,
I've still never held one.
It's so funny because I could have got into that project years and years ago, and I had people ask me if I would trade for, het scaleless, and I was just like, no. And he's like, why, you don't like money? And my good friend, who was like a little bit overly protective and stuff, and she's a vet tech, she goes, well, I just don't want a snake that feels like a dog's scrotum.
Fair enough.
And I'm just like, where did that come from?
I feel like there's not.
I don't know. I wouldn't know. I don't have that experience. Right. But when I got it, they're super soft, and they just like remind me. They're cute. They remind me of Muppet snakes.
Yeah.
And it was really beautiful, ochre colored, super orange, black border, and it just looked like a Muppet to me. And it was really soft, and so I'm like, dang it. I didn't like the scaleless.
I was like, I'm not gonna like scaleless. I'm not. Anything that's just an instant phallic representation in my snake group, we're just not gonna mess with it, right? We're not gonna do it. There's too many jokes,
bad memories.
Too many bad memories. And oh god, then I saw scaleless aneries.
Nice.
And then I saw a scaleless anery that was like almost adult at Daytona last year, and I was like, no. Oh, why is it so pretty? Oh man.
I was at Tony D's stuff after you pointed me to the interview, and I'm like, oh my gosh.
Oh.
Tony D like stuff. The clown ones?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, those.
I didn't even know those were a thing.
Yeah, Ron Allen is the one that's working with the clown.
Or like the Suzy Q.
Yeah.
CB2 or something like that. I can't keep up with all the amazing breeders, but
there's so many.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough, and and this is kind of a question I wanted to ask. We all come from different avenues. We all kind of got here in different ways. Was there anybody that kind of mentored with you a little bit, or anybody that you've leaned on heavily in this hobby as you've learned and grown through your tenure?
When I got started, I think there was just so many of us when King Snake kind of really started taking off, and then CornSnakes.com really started. We were kind of like a big family, starting from scratch, just telling each other, what we had and what we learned, and kind of a group thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, Don Soderbergh has always been amazing to me, and I could listen to him all day long. But I'll send him a 2-sentence question, and I get this beautiful, amazing, scroll 3 times text, and it's so I just love his writing style.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so nice of him. I can't imagine how busy he is and how much things he has going on and how many babies he has to deal with, and he takes the time to write this out.
Mm-hmm.
So I've always appreciated that, and him sharing his opinions, or I'll send him pictures and he'll tell me what he thinks. And so I'm getting my second and third corns from him. I think he's always just been a big help to me.
Yeah.
A little bit awesome. Of an enabler. Too much of a help sometimes.
The best ones are. That's great.
But I think there's just too many people to mention as far as the everyday. Everybody kind of built on the knowledge together.
Right.
Yeah. That kind of timeline. I was really more focused on geckos in 98, 99, kind of into the early 2000s. I did start getting colubrids in 2003. I was 18. I moved out. I started getting colubrids, and it was kind of interesting to be into colubrids. I had Alterna, I had corn snakes, I had some bull snakes, which kind of represents what I have now, the things I love. We were kind of the underdogs because, right, like 2003, 2005, ball pythons just explode.
Yep.
And 2002, 2003, 2004, you're seeing albino ball pythons at shows for $5,000-$6,000, and they're selling like hotcakes. And then, like you said, you go to a table and you see these gorgeous colubrids, Mexican Black Kings, and some of the different variations of corns. And at that time, there was so much more provenance on line breeding your projects, right? People were talking about the time that they put in, the generations. I'm going for this specific phenotype. I'm going to call it this line, and you had these Don Lemke's and these, these people in other animals, your bloaties, your guys that would line breed these colubrids to get a specific phenotype that was unique to their own collection. And at the whole time, you've got like these ball python guys that are like importing, dinkers or whatever they're calling them, and making Mojaves and Lessers. And not to downplay the looks of these animals, they're beautiful, right? They're gorgeous. But you kind of had to play as an underdog because there wasn't a value to it, right? There wasn't this. You're not gonna get rich off of that. You need to do this, and it's like, well, this wasn't about the money. This was about the passion for that little animal right there. That look at what I did. And so I'm glad that, especially people like you and a lot of these other men and women that stuck with it did stick with it, right? Like that's really special.
And it's like even nice for me to still hear that the Lemke name still goes out there too.
Oh yeah, Don Lemke. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, people don't even. I gotta go on a tangent. I love Pachyophysis, but this guy had red northern pine snakes, and he was breeding patternless northern pine snakes. He had generated so many different lineages of animals through a curated collection, and people don't even know they existed anymore, right? Like because I don't know his status now, I may be remiss to even be talking about him, but I don't think he's breeding or working with snakes at all. The Van Deventer lines, right? You're to some extent Bob Applegate working with a lot of king snakes and corn snakes and Pachyophysis. A lot of these guys' names kind of got washed away because of the I hate to say the ball python craze because that's what we all call it. But when Tiger Woods came in and started just crushing that ball further than everybody, they had to change the course, right? So once the ball pythons came in, they really changed the spread of what people were doing and what people were capable of financially, and it kind of washed away some of the hard work that had been put in for the 30, 40 years before.
I think a lot of the information just got sort of fragmented with the internet as well too, and it just became a thing where there's now so many more people out there that everything just sort of dissipated.
Yeah, and a lot of those old school guys that had amazing stuff, but they just weren't internet savvy and and had no desire to be either. They were happy doing what they were doing, but it's a shame that the world doesn't get to see as much as what they were doing.
Your Walter Smiths, your even to some extent, your Holy Trinity, right? Your Craig Trumbauer, Howie Sherman, Don Soderbergh, or Tony D. You've got your Abbott line stuff, your Love line stuff, Kathy Love, right?
Yeah.
Like look at the work that
she's always been the sweetest person too. Like I always enjoyed. She was one of the few people that once in a while back in the day would go to a West Coast show, and her and Bill were just so sweet.
Yeah,
and just welcome everybody.
And to even still hear her talk, she within the last couple of years did an episode on Colubrid and Colubroid Radio, and just to hear the love that she has, and not to, fun play on words, but the passion she still got in it. She's still there, right? Like it's, and she's also one of those people that can recollect her stories and talk about this fluently. Like, oh man, this was in the 70s and we did this, and it's like, wow.
That's amazing to me. I mean, I'm like zombie. I'm like, shoot, let me go through my breeding plans. Yeah. That was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But these ones, I mean, like maybe there was less morphs to remember, but their memory is definitely better than mine is. It's amazing.
And that's, and of course it's one of the reasons we wanted to have you on and talk with you about all of this great stuff. And there's still, again, there's more and more and more we want to talk about. It's to capture these stories and capture these lifetimes of people,
information,
and this information. You're 22 years of doing this. It's pretty special, and that's something we need to all remember.
Thanks.
Absolutely. So, in all these years with corn snakes, tell us a little bit about your keeping style. Is it do you go for a little bit more minimalist, maybe a little bit more becoming of breeder, more fairing for the breeder, or is there any specific things you've really learned over the years that stand out?
You give your babies a 60-gallon aquarium?
Yes, of course.
It's 120 gallons, Justin.
Oh, sorry.
I have to give a shout out to my husband because he's been such a support and help and snake cleaner, and it cracks me up because he does. How we have it is he does the adults and sub-adults, and I do the 1-year-olds and the hatchlings, and then all the sales and all that. And but he takes care of it's kind of nice for me because it'll be sometimes a month and I haven't seen any of my adults, and I'll go in there to go kind of check on everybody, and it's just like they're new all over again because I don't see them every week, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this one, or I haven't seen it after it shed, it looks like this, and it's really fun for me that he does that for me and helps. But we have, I forgot what else I was going to say about that. But I have a rack system, but we do the Sterilite tubs.
Okay.
And I do the Sterilite tubs with the lids on.
Okay.
So they can't get out. There's no way they can get out of that, but also it's a pain because you have to pull them all the way out to clean them. But it's also, we've had, in California, we get fires and we've had evacuation lines pretty close here. And I always figure in an evacuation, it'd be way easier. I mean, I think you have time to put them all in bags and stuff, but if I didn't, we have big enough car space, I think, where we could take most of them in their bins and we had to, it was a lifesaver because a few years ago, my worst nightmare, we had to fumigate my house.
Oh, yeah.
And so everybody had to get out. And thank goodness, here goes my parents again. They let me keep everybody in their garage with a little AC cooler because it was in the summer, so we had to have an AC on them just to keep them at 80 degrees. So we had to just take everybody in their tub, and I don't think the snakes really got too stressed out because they were still in their little tub, just in a different location. So I don't have racks for the babies and the yearlings. I don't have racks for, and I'm still struggling trying to find the perfect bin for them, or maybe I'm just gonna have to go to racks because if
Dollar
we lose
Tree.
it, yeah.
I found these little what are they? I think they're like 96 ounce, maybe 36 ounce. They're these red lidded tubs that are like McCormick brand that I have absolutely fallen in love with for hatchlings and stuff because they're the perfect size. They're low profile. It's like the perfect amount of floor space for hatchlings, and they're easy to stack. They don't take up a ton of space, and they're cheap.
Yeah, I recently found some big Ziploc style bins at Target, and they were great. But then all of a sudden, there was like some batches that came out that you could just with one finger pop the lid off.
Oh no, yeah.
And so luckily, like I test them, like we drill the holes and I get them set up and I test them all before I do it. And it's like, oh, I had like 20 of them and they all popped off. And then I'm the weirdo at Target sitting there opening them all up, seeing if they're the kind that seal or not. And they're probably like someone goes by and I'm like pulling them all out, closing them and opening them. And they're like, and I'm like, I even asked my husband today and he walked away from me because we're talking about what we're doing today. And I'm like, would you be willing to go to Target and test them? And he just like walks away. He gets.
I use these 2.7 liter Sterilite tubs. This one is an egg box. I use them also for my egg boxes, but they have a locking.
Oh, the latch.
Lid. Oh my god, I love the latch. And so anything.
Is that the 5.8 quart or what?
This is a 2.7 quart. So this is good for like hatchling to a couple months old.
Is that what you gave me that Leonin? Yeah.
And I have exactly one.
Oh, you have to send me the scan code.
Yeah, absolutely. Can do. I stack and they stack. They stack so wonderfully. Because they have. Like,
it looks like they do. Yeah.
Yeah, they have these like a recess in the lid that like
see
sits in there.
The big version of those are what I use for my adults.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Like the giant versions, but I haven't found the right smaller one yet.
Yeah. Oh man, I get to put the lid on and then I get to hear the click and then I get to stack it on another one and I burn holes. I use a soldering iron.
I
burn a bunch of holes in the side and I'm just and then I have a nice little front area to label on it. And, I do have some racks that I use sea serpents, pencil tubs, but in all honesty, they're really good. But they're only good for a little bit. They're fine with king snakes and stuff like that, but some corns hatch out massive. And then I go to this. V15s are great, but you need a lot of V15s. That's kind of the problem. And I'm excited to work with some of this BlackBox stuff because if it's as tight as everybody's saying it is, the V15 will actually seal. Because a lot of my V15s, if I put a hatchling in, I ain't gonna have that hatchling anymore.
Yeah,
they're gonna get out.
I use the little sandwich size containers for when they first hatch, but like the Ziploc for a sandwich, but they outgrow those fast.
Yeah, that's why I like those red litter ones that I've been using too. Is that you've got a decent amount of time before they need an upgrade. My only gripe with those is like you have to press on the center of the lid to get it to actually snap shut. Like you cannot chase it to close it around the edge. It will not happen. So it took me a minute to learn that. Like you have to press on just the middle of the lid,
the center of the thing,
and it snaps. Not put your water bowl there.
I went through this thing where I glued all of my water bowls down. Every water bowl was hot glued to the thing, and then I had a cup that fit in there, right? And it was awesome. And then, oh my god,
I hate not being able to move a water bowl. Like those tubs that come with the holder in them, like can't stand them. Like I just can't.
Yeah.
I got to be able to move it wherever I want to.
Justin, they all poop under the water bowl. It's the only place they poop. They wrap around the water bowl and they squirt crap under it, and there's no way.
Make sure it's really sealed. Those urates, man, it's like super glue. They're just doing the job extra for you.
You would have to glue around the outside of the little thing, and it just freaked me out this year because me and my kid went through and glued down 100 tubs because I realized how many eggs I had and how many slides I had in my stupid baby rack. And we did two things. We did these 2.7 Sterilites, and then we did the big deli cups, right? Like the big deli like show cup. I knew I could get them quick, so I got a whole bunch of them. And we glued all these beautiful little water bowl holes down. And I've thrown almost all of them away because you cannot get that crap out. There's no way to get the poop out from under the water bowl. It's there permanently. It is fused with the plastic. So, super stressful. So Carol, just a kind of side question: Do you cohab anything by chance?
No, I've kind of like that first experience. Really,
yeah.
Just really put the nail in the coffin for me on that one. I mean, once in a while, if I'm putting a pair together and I'm not saying anything and I get frustrated, sometimes I will just leave them overnight.
Yeah.
But other than that, and I always had a hard time having an answer at the show when people say, "Hey, can we cohab?" Because some people, I mean, I feel like if those two snakes that I had were the same sex, they would have been fine.
Mm-hmm.
But I just always tell them it's like jaywalking. You could get away with it, or you could buy a truck. You know, it's everybody's personal decision. So I don't have any. Don't say anything about anybody that does. That's their thing. If they get away with it, fine. But I think I just turned me off so early that I'm like, no.
Yeah, it's I cohab very few animals, but the stuff I cohab has been cohab since it was a hatchling.
Yeah,
and I don't know why, but I've never had snakes breeding that I didn't want breeding, and I never had a female go at it too young from
that's
cohabbing.
Good.
And I don't know if it has anything to do with them having been together since hatchling and they didn't breed till I cooled them, or it may just be my climate is different, right? Like I'm in the I can't see, I'm not in the butthole of Texas, but if I stood on my roof, I could see it. So it's real hot, it's real humid. I'm on the ocean front, I'm right next to the water, and it's like I don't have anything breed. I couldn't get snakes to breed without brood mating, except for one time I had a pair breed without brood mating. But that's
probably where the person that gave me the information, I'm sure that was true in his case.
Yeah.
So.
So on your breeding, you are one of the few people, we've had a couple, but you're one of the very few people that have been on this podcast that don't have Pantherophis local to you, right?
Yeah.
You're not in a state where there's any. You're in California. There's no Pantherophis.
How do you live?
How is life good?
We have calkings and gophers.
Oh man, y'all have Pacific gophers up there, right?
Yeah, and the calkings are really cool. Whenever I come across.
If you're okay, talk about what area are you in California?
I'm just south of San Jose, so South Bay area.
Yeah.
Stupid expensive to live. Awful. I want to get out of here, but.
Well, Texas is our arms are wide open, right?
It's just so expensive here. It's awful.
You've got some cool calkings there. Some
cool
calkings.
And you can actually find them. You don't even have to go herping or anything. You just can go on a hike and you'll find them somewhere. And years and years ago, more than 10 years ago too, I worked on a shotgun range. I managed a shotgun range, and I would see them a lot walking the grounds over there. And one time I saw one. It was so cool because I might have even been looking for lizards for my corn snakes, but I saw one under a bush, and he was drinking from the drip system, just like a little bottle. It was so cool and cute and neat at the same time. I was like, "Oh, you got it down. You know where your water's coming from."
Yeah, that's awesome. So
yeah, they're really easy to find here.
Yeah, and I mean you're not far for some really, really cool locations for. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know. Well, even San Francisco garter, I think, is one of the most gorgeous snakes ever. But I don't know if I have it in me to go and try and find one.
Well,
I think Tim Spuckler found one, but I mean, he's like the pro of pros.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, Tim's got some killer stuff.
So I wouldn't imagine. Yeah, he did a trip to California. In his pictures, I was so jealous. I'm like, okay, that's like an hour from me.
Yeah.
But there's no way I can go and find it.
You should have rosy boas there too, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Those are more in the hills, so you kind of have to go on I don't see those unless I'm on a hike.
More towards the Sequoia area, I guess. Right?
Yeah, or any hilled area. Sometimes you find them. In Yosemite, you'll find them.
Yeah.
And then, so I used to have rosy boas too. It's like I'm like the list of what I've had before is probably longer than I could ever remember at one time. But I love rosy boas too. They're so soft.
They are. I had a pair of all three subspecies at one time before I found out they're actually illegal in my city, and I got to keep and breed them. They're really neat. They're kind of a weird care wise. It's neat because they're kind of different. They like it a lot hotter. They like it a lot drier, which is kind of funny because I have stuff from the same area that doesn't require that. But it's a neat little live bearing boa thing that will, if you're taking that water bowl out, can actually somehow bite you from across the tub. And when they bite for keeps for some reason. So you get to fling up. You get to do this neat thing where like your knee-jerk reaction is pulling your hand away, and then the snake goes flying. And it's super fun. I enjoyed. I'm saying that I really, really, really did enjoy them. My Magdalene Plains anneries were by far some of the coolest animals I've ever had.
We always just call them. I like this affectionate. I always just feel affection towards them because they're so. We would always call them the squishies, and even like my husband, that just he just tolerates it all. But when he sees one at the show, he'll be like, "There's squishies over there."
And they kind of look derpy, right? Like they kind of have this like weird like look, and they're funky and they're.
I had one as a kid. It was horrible.
Really?
Yeah. Justin can't get bit by anything.
Worst.
Justin's got soft hands.
Oh, I hate getting bit. I jump every time.
Yeah, I just yell. I'm very, very vocal.
I jump. I don't know what's going on with my hatchlings this year, and that got me off on a dumb tangent too. I'm like, could snakes be right-handed or left-handed? Because this year I've had more snakes take off to the left than I've ever had before, and I don't know. It's just weird because normally they'll be random, it'll be 50-50 or I'll catch them, but like this year they're all going to the left and I can't grab them, and I'm just always just like but yeah, when they tag me, I jump every time, and I don't know what, I'm not scared of it. It doesn't hurt. It's just like a jack-in-the-box thing for me.
Yeah.
I'm like, why? Don't bite me.
And then you have the one baby that's just overly dramatic and S's up and leans its head back and falls over, and it's just and it's like, why are you like this?
That's that entire Sonya Motley clutch, man.
They're all fuzzballs.
Every single one of them.
It wasn't genetic. My son, when he used to help me, and we had yellow rat snakes at one time too, and he would help me. And he was probably like 10 years old, and he was helping me, and I just hear him from the other room. Do these ones bite? And I'm like, why did they bite you? He just walks out like dead serious. Comments can be and his lips are just bleeding because the thing tagged him in the face.
Oh no.
And he's just like not even upset or mad or hysterical. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't bad, but I was like, oh my God, okay, you don't deal with those ones anymore. But he's just, they bit me.
Goodness.
I would be like, there would have been definitely like a yowl for me of surprise, and then got over it. And we had a corn once too, super aggressive. I've never had one like her, and she was on the bottom of the rack. And if you pulled her up, if she was remotely hungry, she would come out after you and nip at your feet.
I've got a few like that.
And me, like a baby, like she'd come out at me. And finally, I just stopped. I let my husband like deal with her because she'd come after me, and I'd run down the hallway, and she'd chase me out the room down the hallway. And her name ended up being Sheila, because my husband would come out and grab her. Look at this, Sheila. Grab her and have her like striking at me and stuff. And I never had another one like her. I mean, her babies were always good feeders.
Yeah.
And now we joke like when we have a really good feeder, it must be a Sheila baby.
That's awesome. I've got a female like that. Her name's Carrie, and she's out for blood, and she is an absolute demon. It doesn't matter what day, night, time. If I open that tub, and I have her tub all labeled because I never know when my kids
danger.
Get in there. Yeah, I have little
painted
labels for my little girl, so she knows like these bite, or there's 2 snakes in here, or stuff like that. And Carrie has a big thing on her thing that says I bite. And I literally open her tub with a hook. I'm that guy. I'm just like, I kind of lean back.
Because you know what's going to happen.
I know what's coming out. And then she does the bite. And she's one of those ones that even if you take them out, they're fine, right? Like you get them in your hands, they stop. She doesn't. Yeah. She's just
most of the ones that I have that are like that. It's you're not holding them without getting bit. It's going to happen. Like the that female Aztec that I got from you actually at Daytona. Was she ever?
No, she's a sweethart. You're talking
I had her out a couple like a week or two ago, and she kept like nosing my arm like she was about to try something. I'm like,
feed
what
that
are you
snake,
doing?
Justin.
She don't need to be fed.
Her name is Pinkalicious.
Pinkalicious don't need food.
Why you call my girl fat?
I was about to feed her yesterday, then I looked at her. I was like,
I gave her this year off. That is a Coral Ghost Aztec Posset Sunkissed 100% het stripe. She
was going for it though. She was thinking about it. Those are the worst ones. The one that you like that don't know, act like they're cool, and then they're like, nah. I just wanted to get you right here, so I got you right where I want you. Like that visual Castagna Motley male that sired that clutch. Like he's an absolute nut. I opened that tub and he's the exact same way. He comes out onto the floor and starts going for my feet. Like it's happened multiple times now, and I'm like, you little bitch. Like I've got a couple other ones that are just horrible. Like as soon as I open the tub, it's on. Like and I'm like, God, this is the Gonyosoma aren't even that bad. Like the Condors, at least they're gonna sit still when they do it. They're not gonna go onto the floor. Like they're just gonna strike at. Like it's just
my conjuncta, which would be like a Baja area California king snake. I'll take them out, and I know they're gonna bite me. Like there's no question they are going to bite me. They only want to eat. That's the only thing they care about unless it's breeding season. And the one for some reason the male won't eat. Well, I know why he doesn't want to eat. And all they want to do is breed for 20 to 25 hours at a time. And so I'll take them out. And they're little, so I'll kind of dangle them a little bit until they bite themselves, and then I just set them on my rolling cart, and they just sit there trying to eat. They just try to eat their own body the whole time I'm cleaning their tub. It's so funny, and I've shown people that I do this. Like, yeah, you just take them out like this, and they won't bite you right away because they're not like defensive; they're just hungry. And then I'm like, look, you just kind of wiggle them like this, and eventually they bite their own, like, I guess their leg, but I guess their lower part of their body, and they just sit there, and the snake's just sitting there, just crunched on itself, and I'm like, they do that. I have been feeding snakes next to them and can see in their tub that they'll just start trying to eat themselves. They just bite themselves, and I'm just like, yeah.
I wonder how they survive in the wild.
There's no chance, right? Like, I have no idea.
How has your species not been extinct for millennia?
It's the same snakes that the female laid eggs. While she is laying eggs, I take pictures of them, and then I go in to get the eggs, and she's literally just eating the eggs, and I'm like, why? Like she's laying eggs and eating them, and I'm like,
recycling.
I was hungry.
Yeah. See, this was a lot of work.
They're not hatched or anything. They're still good.
I had a 2-year-old corn that was just so bad. I couldn't even handle him anymore. I'm like, I can't handle this snake. So I brought him to a show with a big danger biter, bad-tempered, if you like that. Some people like that for whatever reason. Power to them. So I put it on my table. And this kid in a wheelchair comes up. And he just looks at it and he's in love. He's like, he has to have that. And I'm like, no, I have 80 other snakes on my table. Surely you like one of them. And I'm like, he bites, he's mean, he's the worst thing. And the kid's just, I have to have him. And I'm like, his parents are there and I'm telling them and they say, we have to have the snake. And I'm like, okay. So I sell it to him. I'm like, okay, that snake's coming back to me tomorrow. Because it was a local show where everybody was like within driving distance. And I kid you not, the rest of the show, the kid had it out of its bin in his lap, cruising around the show the whole time like a puppy dog. I don't know if they were drawn, they were soulmates or what.
There you go.
It was the most bizarre thing.
Bonded in their hatred.
I don't know. It was really cool. I was happy to find they both got what they wanted, but the snake maybe just didn't like me. I don't know.
That's Sometimes, and then, like the snake I said, Justin, that's one that my kid would randomly take out. I mean,
she was fine when I got her. I don't know. She kept poking like she was about to take a test. And I'm like,
she hungry. You gotta feed her.
See, like that bothers me. But the other night, I was pulling a chondro out because I had to do a puppy pad change and. Thinking she wasn't awake, I had my palm like right next to her and she nailed me. And I was like, okay. But like one of those little baby Castagna Motley hets starts losing its mind. I'm like, what are you doing? I don't know. It's the same thing. It's like, I know it doesn't hurt. I know it's like completely inconsequential, but it's just like that Jack in the Box.
Yeah, it's a Jack in the Box factor.
Okay, so Carol, I got to ask, when I was kind of talking about not having any Pantherophis in your state, kind of where you're at, do you feel like maybe your breeding tactics or your brumation tactics are different, or what is your go-to plan for that?
I want to get back to how I've slowly drifted, and this year was extra bad. I always would wake them up in December or New Year's at the latest.
Okay.
And I would always have start hatching in May.
When
and that worked really well. I'm sorry?
When were you putting them down?
Around October.
Okay.
Yeah, around October. I'd start them in November if I was going to wake them up in New Year's.
Mm-hmm.
It's real hard here to keep them, even with the AC in the closet. I mean, next is here. It's October right now. In a couple of days, it's going to be 97 here. So,
yeah.
And it's all over the place. Like last week, it was probably 65 degrees. So it's all over the place, and it's kind of hard. So I have the weather to have to work into, but I hate having eggs when it does really get hot here. We finally now have a new AC, but before we did, it used to just scare me when the house would get so hot. And I'd have
me for
eggs.
1 sec, guys. Y'all keep chatting. I got to step aside for 1 second.
Okay. So I want to get back to that slowly. I don't know how, but I've just gotten later and later and later.
Mm-hmm.
And then this year, just because I had a lot of family things going on, we had some deaths in the family and crazy stuff. I didn't wake them up until I had to wake them up.
Right.
And so this year I ran really late. So I'm trying to bump. I don't think it's going to be a slow process because you have to get them to a certain weight.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been pumping them, getting them bigger, and I'm just going to have to slowly just start earlier because I really like having them earlier. And then I really don't even have to heat them if I have babies in July, August.
Right.
But I really don't care I've been having them now late July, August, and even my favorite show now after COVID. Now they've been having a show at the end of July, and I'm like, oh, that's hard because I'm just barely hatching right now. So It's my favorite show. It's always my home show. I always want to vend, so I'm like, okay, I want to make sure I start pulling it in earlier so I have babies by the end of July. But we'll see how it goes. It's he can't force it. They got to gain the weight and giving them doubles like crazy. But we'll see.
Are you cooling just your adults, or are you cooling down yearlings and stuff too, or is there
just adults?
Okay.
Yeah, that's really I kind of use that time to bump up everything that's not adult.
Smaller stuff, right?
Yeah. So they kind of get their tender loving care to grow them up a little bit bigger while those ones are cool down.
Yeah, last year I cooled down some of the younger ones. They weren't like yearlings, but they were, that 2-year mark. Just because
the males, I think.
Yeah, they'll getting them sort of prepped, I guess. But it also, I breed my own rodents, so it gives me more time to really load up for when I wake them up and things like that. So for me, it's kind of just a nice break off the amount of rodents I'm having to feed off and be able to stock up a little bit.
Yeah, I've put some younger males in with them, but some of the females, if they're not ready and you brumate them and bring them up and they're not breeding size, I've had some that have bound on slugs before.
Oh, really?
So, and that always gets me too, because I'll have some females where I'm like, okay, she's not quite big enough. I'm kind of worried. I'll go until next year, and then she binds on slugs, and I'm like,
yeah.
I should have bred her, because I would have had eggs. But then I'm like, well, if you bred her, you would have thought she bound because of that, and you wouldn't have forgiven yourself either. So,
yeah, in the Pitchiophis world, a lot of people will not brumate at all if they don't want the female to breed, if they don't plan on pairing them, because Pitchiophis will get egg bound really easily.
Mm-hmm. So I just try to pump anybody that's anywhere near that might be breeding size. I just try and pump them up. And if they don't make it because of the brumation, that's fine. Then they'll be even better shape for the following year. Because I'm not huge on the 300 gram thing, because I know it's not the same as people, but I'm like, as a 12-year-old that's 200 pounds ready to breed.
Right.
I think you get more egg binding when they're young and fat.
Mm-hmm.
Than if they're 250 and in good shape, they tend to do better. But you can tell if their head's real small, they're not real long, and they're this giant fat 300-gram snake, it just doesn't go well.
Yeah, I've got
age
females
for
that
me
are
is the marker.
Me too.
Yeah, I've got females that are 5-6 years old that I still don't think are 300 grams. They're just small snakes, and it's they've bred, they've been good, there's no issues, they eat fine. They're just not getting any more size.
I think that, and I think honestly, there's going to be a market for that. I find now, because one of the most popular question besides what do they eat is how big is it going to get?
Yeah.
And if I have a big corn on my table, they're like, oh my god. But then a lot of the Miami stuff is smaller. A lot of my cinder stuff could be smaller, and then they see that one. I'm like, okay, that one's full grown, and they'll be like, okay, that one's not so bad.
Yeah.
So I've always thought too there might be a market for the ones that are smaller.
Yeah, and I really thoroughly believe that sort of the standard size for a lot of species that people keep in the hobby is severely exaggerated compared to what they should be and what they are, like natural history wise. Because a lot of my stuff is on the smaller side, and it's a lot of it is because I don't feed the hell out of them, super regularly, super heavy, like maybe I'm just lazy in that regard, but like I have some stuff that's 2 years old that's pretty small, and could be bigger. But then when I start to wonder if maybe I'm not feeding them enough, it's like, are we comparing that to the what we see online and what people consider the standard size for a 2 or 3 year old snake? It's like, is what I'm doing
that drives me nuts, the standards.
Yeah, and it's like I don't think there's anything wrong with stuff being smaller for its age than what people say we should have, especially in the corn snake groups in particular. Like some of the snakes that I see on there, it's like I'd be embarrassed if I saw a snake that was that overweight, that gross looking, like just, and people encourage it.
Yeah, and it bothers me too, where you get a new keeper and how should my snake is this big, this many years old, it should be this big, and they have this chart of what it should be. And I'm like, right now I have a snake that it's had 8 meals and it hatched in the same clutch. The egg was really tiny, the rest of the eggs were normal sized, and I think after 8 meals it's tipping 3 grams.
Wow.
Oh wow.
And its name is Itty Bitty, and it's gonna stay here until it could take, I have to go through like 200 pinkies to find a pinky now that it can take, because I started with heads and stuff. But this clutch mates are probably 15 grams by now, and same clutch, eating the same. So I think it's just hard, because if you get a new keeper and they're saying, oh, my snake is only this big, and then they start power feeding them, and that could be completely, you get a regurg and you're way set back. So
right. Well, it's like if I posted some of these 2 year old snakes in these groups and said this is a 2 year old snake, people would be like, "You're not feeding that animal enough. That animal's gonna die." And it's like, this animal's gonna live longer than any of the other snakes that I see posted on here.
Yeah.
People like, get out of here. I'd rather it be thinner and leaner and older.
And they don't exercise. They don't exercise if they're never looking for food.
Right.
If the second they can possibly digest something else, you're throwing something in front of them, they never look. So there's just no muscle.
Yeah, exactly. I keep my males. I would say my males are they're not thin, but they're structured so well. When you pick those snakes up, you feel the muscles. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You look at them, you would never think any of them were thin, right? You don't see their spine. You don't see their scales encrusting on the inside. But I like, my females too. Sometimes females get a little dilapidated just because of egg bearing and laying eggs and going through multiple cycles of ovulation and laying eggs. And so, but yeah, I like, man, you could really just tell. And I'm one of those people that's like, I'll have a female, Pinkalicious was one of them, that she laid eggs, and she would have been fine. She bounced back. I could have bred her last year. But I'll randomly give females the year off. Not randomly, calculated give females the year off. If I'm like, you've done a lot of work, you've done this, you've done that, but also, I'm not loving the way you look, right? So before brumation, after brumation, I'll make that decision. I really try to not brumate anything I'm not breeding, and kind of that same fear of man, you're going to ovulate, you're going to slug out, and it's just one more thing for me to have to worry about.
And that's a good time to beef them up too. Is if you have a female that's struggling when everybody else is down, then you can leave her up and just really pump her up.
Oh yeah. Oh
She
man.
doesn't go. She doesn't go.
November, January, December is when all my little babies and yearlings and grow outs and females that didn't breed really get fed. Just I wouldn't say fed the best, right? It's not like I'm not feeding these animals, but if I miss one or I forgot one or I didn't thaw out enough damn mice, right? Like that's always the problem, right? You know, you never thaw out the right number. I've never done it. I get these little index cards. I used to keep them stacked up here on my freezer, and I would write down exactly how many mice I needed to thaw out. Every damn time I was wrong. Every time I was wrong. I've never done it. I got a degree in math, right? I don't know how I'm so dumb. Right? It's just
stop counting. Just
right?
force them in there, feed them off, and then figure out what you got left.
Yeah, I that's what I do now. Is I'm just like I just go through. I'm like, all right, 50 small mice. All right, 10 rats. All right, 10 jumbo mice. And a bag of large pinkies and maybe some hoppers or whatever. And, all right, y'all are all going to eat. We're going to figure it out. There's no difference, right? There's no difference because I've got a few snakes that I don't feed that heavy that I'm like, you know what? I've got 2 pinkies left or a fuzzy left or a rat left. I'm like, I'll just give it to, this female gets to eat two
MBK.
Today.
Our MBK is always the leftover eater, the female.
Yeah.
Well, no problem for her.
So, you've kind of answered one of the closing questions we usually ask about palmetto and scaleless. But one thing we would really like to ask, what is your personal thoughts on the future of corn snakes?
I think it's going to have to be boutique, like a more boutique market because of what we talked about. You can't have them all. And even in just one morph, there's so many things you could do with one morph. I think there'll be more boutique breeders, but I'm really hoping someone has the time and patience to start another registry. Because if we had kept the one, Chuck Pritzel and his wife had started one, and it was great, and just couldn't keep it going. But I wish we could, because with the genetics and so many things we don't know, we could really share each other's information and who got what from breeding what, and we would have the numbers to figure things out a little bit more.
Yeah, holding that lineage strong.
I wish. I know Don started a thread on his little Facebook forum talking about he thinks Miami's might have might be more prone to making pinstripes.
Mm-hmm.
So he's asking for data, and I'm like, okay, maybe when I've sold some babies and everybody's down, I can go through and see what my numbers were.
Yeah.
But if there was a registry, it'd be like, bam, here, let me just pull up and look it up, and here's your numbers to see if that's a fact, if the numbers kind of look like that's fact or not. So I think that would help so much us figure out what we don't know.
Yeah,
I'm not saying I see it happening. Just something I wish would happen. Definitely is not something I could take on right now, but it'd be nice to see. But I think more boutique breeders. I know I'm seeing more and more pets and less breeders.
Yeah.
But some people don't mind paying a lot of money for. I mean, you're going to have this thing 15 to 20 years. Not all pets. There's going to be a market that wants your $75 corn snake, but I think there's a pet market that will still buy a $300 corn snake.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so, if they're going to do it, they're going to do it all the way,
And I don't think that anybody can have them all anymore. I really don't.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Eric maybe is the closest.
I'm about to say Eric might have everything.
He might.
Is there a particular morph that you think needs more attention over time, or that you would like to see?
Lava blood red. Yeah, I think lava blood red's first on my list of getting those back to how they looked originally, and a lot of them too. The Joe Pierce lines were so red, and those have just gotten so dispersed. I'm gonna probably have to try and collect some of those to start that someday. I was crazy enough to start. I think I kind of dropped it. I'm like, what happens if you do red coat and red factor? And I think that would just be a giant headache in a couple of once you have babies. That's definitely keep everybody back. And
yeah, Jeff Bong has some red coat, red factor, lava stuff.
Nice.
That's pretty crazy looking. I think it's red coat, red factor, lava. He's got some diffused in there and some albino mixes.
He's got all kinds of goofy.
Oh,
He's
I'd
got
love
some
to-
stuff.
I'd
He's
love
got
to
some
see
stuff
it
that's
because I
so-
think that's what the world needs.
It's so damn red. He's got pure red snakes. Oh,
The
and he's got
cherry
some that
stuff
are also
too,
striped.
right?
Yeah. Cherry is I think red factor, albino, line bred, old Don Soderbergh line. I think.
I think so too.
It's tough to remember all of this stuff.
It
There's
is.
so much, and then the more you get infatuated with it, the more you enamor yourself with it, the harder it is to really grasp all of it. Right? Like you said, having that kind of like pedigree system where you really know everything you have and you know that lineage, which leaps and bounds.
And the more we learn, the more we find out what we don't know.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. So it's just, that's always like when I read posts, I always know like who's beginner and who's been here a while. When they're like, this is always like this and this is always like that. No, we don't know it all.
No.
Yeah, just tip of the iceberg right now. I think is what we know.
Yeah, definitely starting the show for us, 21 episodes in, just everybody we talk to, there's more questions, more quandaries, more conundrums, more.
Yeah.
More
and if we
thoughts.
could all share our data,
Yeah.
it'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Well, if people want to get in touch or follow what you are doing, where's the best place for them to do that?
Messenger on Facebook, Carol. I do the Carol Huddleston one more often than Low Belly, just because it's more active.
Yeah.
My email, real easy, Carol@LowBellyReptiles. Sometimes though, my spam blocker stuff will get lost. So if you haven't heard from me after a couple days, then shoot me a messenger or shoot both accounts.
Here you go.
Absolutely.
Yep. And website's lowbellyreptiles.com.
And you be sure to ignore me when I message you, probably tonight, asking about weirdo stuff and what you have available. I do not need more snakes.
Yeah, I have some that I think almost everything that I have posted has sold, but I have some that I'm like, oh, I find them. I think I hide them for myself because I think I want to keep it, and then the next thing I know, it's feeding day, and I'm like, I've come across 4 of these now.
Yeah. I do the same thing.
So,
well, we really appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely, thank you so much.
You were the very top of the list of people we definitely wanted to have on at some point. So I'm glad we made it happen.
Well, thanks for putting up with me for 2 hours.
Oh, absolutely, wonderful episode, and hopefully, maybe in time, maybe another year or so, we'll have you on. We'll catch back up where you're at and what we've kind of found with some of these lineages you're working with, and what things are kind of turning into. It's awesome. Love it.
Cool.
This episode was brought to you by BlackBoxCages.com. Check them out. Facebook, Instagram. Use code THN at checkout. Get yourself something nice. Silent Hill Reptiles. SilentHillReptiles.com. Go hunt down JT. See what he's got for sale. He's got a lot. Who knows? I have a feeling his next season is going to be pretty light. Whether he's going to say it's going to be light, whether it actually will be or not, who knows?
Yeah, who knows what he's going to do.
And then FulviusApparel.com. Also use the code THN at checkout, 15% off for THN listeners and viewers like you. We will be back tomorrow night for Snakes and Stogies, number 180 something, I think. I believe. I don't know. Phil should be back, so we'll see. But either way, we appreciate you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Have a good one.
Thank you.